Today you are in for a taxing ride. Okay? Because it's Anattā. But let's talk about what we did last week. You see, in this practice, ultimately, you're preparing the mind to be able to see itself. And when you are successful in your effort to prepare the mind, if you are successful, then the mind should be able to spot certain obvious features about itself. One of those features is the impermanence of each moment. Each moment of experience arises and dissipates, just like that. It comes up, it goes off. So the first prominent, obvious feature that if you're very objective and you're very quiet, you should be able to spot that the moment comes and goes, just like that. And you don't just see it, you internalize it, you feel it. It is an experience. Unforgettable. The moment you see that moment that comes and dissipates. It is an experience you have to remember, you have to internalize, remember, and constantly experience it. It must spill into your daily life. That's the first feature. The second feature that eventually will dawn on you, if you spend quite a bit of time looking at the mind, eventually it will dawn on you, the second feature that will dawn on you is the correlation between dukkha and your wanting. Meaning to say, as you become more and sharper at observing the mind, you will begin to spot the energy, the sensation of craving. That craving energy is so blatant in your face. You don't call it by any other name, it's just one thing. And this one thing, you will begin to see that this one thing, this craving, you call it craving, you get a bit agitated saying, I have no craving, because you very choose ma. But if you don't call it by the very stark term craving, it's just quite preferencing, quite wanting, then you may find it easier to accept that you have such instincts. This is the instinct of man. All fellas, everyone, it's there. And this instinct is the reason why you also experience dukkha. That's the second feature that becomes obvious to you. Very obvious, okay? Today, I'm going to introduce the third feature. Today's topics, I told you it's going to be a taxing ride. We're going to cover three things. We're going to cover the third feature, which is Anattā. We're going to cover the Four Noble Truths, which is like nothing you've heard of so far. And we are going to cover Paticcasamuppada, dependent origination, conditionality. So for those of you who hope that today's session is going to be fruitful, I also hope so. Lor. It's going to be fruitful, but if you all start staggering out with a headache, not my fault. Okay? All right, let's start with Anattā. I think sufficient numbers have arrived. I think the statement is self-explanatory. Anattā, the idea, which I will explain in a short while. Anattā, to see this particular feature is difficult. It's going to be very difficult. As I've said, most people, if they start to quieten down the mind and they start to observe the nature of the mind, most people will be able to figure out, will be able to see anicca, impermanence, because it's so obvious. Comes and goes, you look at it, you see it. You will also see dukkha, also fairly obvious. But anattā, substancelessness, selflessness, they are very tough. Okay? In my mind, Conceptually, meaning to say, if you think about it, it's already very difficult to get it. Conceptually. To see it and to realize it, very tough. Most people, in fact, for most practitioners, this will be the last thing that they start to realize. And even then, it takes a while to internalize it, okay? So what is anatta? Now, in the time of the Buddha, the word anatta was, of course, introduced by the Buddha in his time, okay? It is actually cast as an opposite of a word that was conventionally used. In the Buddha's time, they used the word atta. Atta to explain that there is something intrinsic within us. That all human being has an intrinsic essence. That's atta. And atta was said to be permanent, never changing, indestructible, beautiful. You got to understand these concepts. These adjectives. Permanent, meaning it doesn't change. The essence doesn't change. That it cannot be destroyed. That it is ultimately beautiful. Okay? That it's ultimately beautiful. So, when you say anatta, the opposite of atta, what you are saying is essencelessness, substancelessness. And in our language today, soullessness. That within us, there is no such thing. That's what the Buddha is saying. Within us, there's no such thing as an eternal essence. This eternal essence doesn't change, and it's beautiful. Buddha says there's no such thing. Now the question is, why is it so difficult to understand? Two reasons. Two reasons why it is so difficult to see anatta. Okay? Reason number one, because the sense of the I, the sense of the self, feels so real. The more you are aware of a watching mind, noting mind, the more you feel that there is something like an essence in you. So asking you to just see the mind, you could end up going, I am real. So Descartes, last week I introduced Descartes' point, his statement, I think, therefore I am. People will nod wisely, yeah, I think, therefore I am, law. Of course, Descartes didn't use law. It's uniquely ours. Okay? Correct? Do you feel that? Or dare not say anything, seriously? Do you feel that when you look, you just look at the mind and you go, how come they kept saying no essence? The mind got essence, ma? Do you feel that way? Yes. The rest don't. Anattā already. I'll see anattā. Either you don't or you don't know what I'm asking. Essence, simi lai. Got it or not? Okay. What's essence? Not chicken essence. Okay. The second reason why we keep holding on to the idea of an essence, right, is because we are attached to being alive. We all don't want to die. We don't want to have no more experience. Just the very thought that when you live and then you die, just that very thought, right? Not so shiok lah, huh? Who say it's shiok? Most of us will say that the idea of just being gone, it's scary. Fair point? Huh? Fair point, huh? Okay. So we cling on to the notion, we cling on to the idea that after we have moved on from this life, something must exist. Something must continue. Because if nothing continues, then this life like so meaningless leh. And somehow you tell me we're going through this again. And again, and again, and again, and again. How meaningless is that? So you have this sense that if there is no essence, there's like no meaning. Yeah? Do you feel that way? Have I made everyone sad? Is this the idea, make you pensive, make you reflective, make you a bit sad? Yeah? So sad, cannot say anything anymore. Okay, now, given the nature of our instincts, given that, Buddha's approach to taming the mind and training the mind to see anatta is different from the training to see anicca and dukkha. If you recall, in terms of training to see anicca and dukkha, what did you have to do? Sit down, be quiet, observe the nature of the mind, see anicca at the different levels. Remember that? First, you start with gross. You see change out there. People grow old, children grow up, things decay, big sweeping change. And you say anicca. At the next level, you start to begin to realize that actually change is all the time. You're moving, you're doing things, change. And then eventually at the third level, you are seeing change at the nano level, down to observing changing nature of feelings, of perception, of reaction. So you absorb information, every moment is a change. You start to see that. So at some point, when you internalize the idea of change, it is through watching. Watching the mind, internalizing it. Get it? The same for dukkha. If you recall, we talk about dukkha dukkhata, viparinama dukkhata, and then finally sankara dukkhata. Why? I can see all this glazing over. Pali word all glaze over. Dukkha dukkhata, the nature of your physical, mental experiences, very obvious, very gross. You cut yourself, painful. People say, I don't want you, painful. All these things, you can feel it immediately. Very obvious, everybody will have the same kind of reaction. Then at the next level, the pain of change, instability. Yeah, I'm beginning to realize that I don't like all these changes. And the nature of life is full of change. And then finally, you say the very fabric of existence is dukkha. You see formation and it is dukkha. But at that level of seeing, your mind is really very sharp. See that? For anatta cannot do the same thing. Because I ask you to see and look at your mind, you're going to go, I'm real. Ask you to see the mind, the nature of the mind, you say, nothing mind. I'm real. 在see. You see what I'm saying? So cannot, therefore Buddha do it this way. Okay? In the nature of observing anatta, you have to change. Not seeing as it is, you actually have to start with the conceptual. And reconditioning the mind to see the world in a different way, you give the mind a new idea, a new perspective to mull over. In other words, you tell the mind, you actually tell the mind, see the form, see yourself in parts. We tell the mind to see itself in parts. Okay? 2 parts. Nama rupa. Form, mind and form. Mind and body. You actually, as a practitioner, you consciously tell your mind there is body and there is mind. That's the first thing. Then the mind not convinced. In 5 parts: form, feeling, vedana, perceptions, Sanya, thought formation, Shankara, consciousness, Vijnana. You actually tell yourself that can you see. This is actually in meditation or in daily life. You tell yourself, look, this is feeling, this is perception, this is consciousness, this is experience of consciousness, this is thought, thinking, thought formation. You tell yourself again and again, identify the parts, okay? Down to 6 parts. Ear consciousness, eye consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mind consciousness, in parts. And one more, 6 times 6, part. So you sliced it, Buddha sliced it into the different types of parts in order for your mind to keep telling yourself, I am in parts. I made out all these parts. That's why you have the analogy of the car. Put it together, there is a car, take it apart, there's no car. So what are you doing with this? It is for you to keep telling your mind conceptually. You keep telling your mind conceptually, I am in parts. I am in the form part, body parts. I am in the mind parts, and the mind parts have all these parts. 6 times 6 parts. What is this 6 times 6 parts? You don't worry about this. We will give you a bigger version, okay? 6 internal bases, 6 external bases, 6 clusters of consciousness, 6 contacts, 6 clusters of feelings, 6 clusters of craving. Internal bases would be your organs. The eye, the nose, ear, tongue, form, mind. That's your organ. External bases would be the objects that the organ relate to. So the eye relates to the object of something outside there, a visual object. So the eye and the visual object come together, you have an image, a visual image. The ear would be a sound object, a sound. The nose, smell, the tongue, taste, object for tasting and so on. Okay, you understand that, huh? Now, the main thing is the 6 clusters of craving should be understood, and then let me just show you the objects. So you have your internal object. This is an external object. Because this was done by a guy, it's a car. If it were done by a woman, this could be a handbag. Okay? Because of these two, there is eye consciousness. There is a registering of something, is consciousness. The 3 coming together is contact. 3 coming together, there is contact. Because of contact, there is feeling in association with the eye. And the feeling, if you like it, there is craving. If you don't like it, there is craving to push it away. Both are cravings. Whether you crave to want it or you crave for it to be pushed away, it's still a preference, it's still a craving, there will still be dukkha. Okay? And the same thing goes. The ear, sound, consciousness, contact, feeling, craving. When the Buddha said the 6 clusters of craving should be understood, he's making the point about the entire chain. The entire chain of experience. So remember, we talked about earlier on 2 parts. Very broad, even at that level, very broad. That's all. There's a mind and there is a body. Then when you break it down to 5 parts, you are becoming sharper in recognizing the different features of the mind. When you see only 2 parts, this is let's just say you are in meditation and Buddha says two parts. And then you realize that, hey, indeed, it is true. There are only two parts. There is a mind and there is a form. The form is going on by itself. The mind is there. Mind and body. Over time, as you become sharper in your seeing, now you're going for 5 parts. And eventually you'll recognize, oh, there is feeling, which is not the same as perception, not the same as consciousness, not the same as a thinking process going on. You start to see the different features of the mind. And then you break it down into 6 parts. This is when you begin to, the mind starts to register the different arising as a result of the organ coming into contact with an external object. Again and again, the mind starts to register different arising of an experience. You understand that? All these have to be experienced. They have to be seen both in meditation and in daily life. And then when you are very sharp in your seeing, now it's 6 times 6. 6 parts, 6 parts. 6 sets, in other words. And you are now going by the set, the entire set. You are aware of an eye registering an object outside. So there's a visual image. You are aware you have absorbed this visual image. There is the contact there. The feeling arises. And you have craving. Feeling first and then craving. If you have absolutely no feeling, there will be no craving. Middle path. Huh? Whether you like it or you don't like it, that's craving. And only when you are neutral, nothing, neutral, then the craving doesn't come up. And you begin to register all these. So I'm going to go through very quickly now. Nose, same thing. Depending, they are all these words are incidentally, all the words are said by the Buddha, these words. Dependent on the body, the tangibles, which is this one, the body consciousness arises, feeling as conditioned, there is craving. This is said by the Buddha. This is not me being clever. Okay? Dependent on the mind and the mind objects, mind consciousness arises. The meeting of the 3 is contact. With contact as condition, there is feeling. With feeling as condition, there's craving. All these are for you to remember. So, A, to be able for the mind to see yourself in parts. And you tell your mind, you tell yourself, as you see it in parts, you tell yourself, the mind, the experience is made out of parts. And you keep telling yourself, I'm made out of parts. That's part 1. There's a whole string of things for you to remember to do conceptually. Conceptually means you understand the logic, you understand the explanation, now you feed yourself the ideas. You tell yourself it's like this. So in your practice, in trying to see Anattā, this is how you do it. You start out by telling you're in parts. Okay? Now got to find the next one. Okay, the second thing you have, but just make sure that we got it. The second thing you have to do is see. Now that you're seeing the parts, recognize the parts as 2 separate ecosystems. There's a physical ecosystem, and there is a mental ecosystem. What do I mean by this? You start to tell yourself, look at the form. There are all these earth element, air element, fire element, water elements. What do we mean by these elements? Earth elements, anything that is substantial, has weight, has substance. You knock at it, it feels solid. So your hair, your nails, the flesh, the bones, organs, they are all earth elements. Water elements would be the blood, the moisture, the liquid that goes through your system. Those are your water element. You can see them when they come out. but you know they exist within the form. What are your wind element? That one you can't see. You can see your problem. Wind element you can smell. You can feel, but you can't see, okay? Fire element would be the temperature that you can feel. And if you touch another form, if he's dead, it's going to be cold. If it's alive, it's going to be hot. It's going to be warm. Not hot. Hot, you're sick. But it will be warm. So these are elements. And when we say that they are ecosystem, what do we mean? How does your temperature come about? How does your hair grow? How many of you regularly cut your hair? Surely all the hands must come out, right? You think it was a trick question, right? I knew you thought it was a trick question, so I asked this question then. So cheap, this question. I must think about it, How regularly do you cut your hair? What does she mean by that? Seriously? All the hands must shoot up, just like that, okay? Why does your hair grow? Because there's a process going on in you that leads to the hair growing, or your nails growing, or your skin becoming wrinkled. Whatever SK2 you are using, it's not going to be a permanent cure. You're just fending off the inevitable. Okay? And this is just like that. It's an ecosystem continuing all the time. And if you're a scientist, you'll be looking at cells. You're looking at the cells, the changes within the cells. That is so anattā, isn't it? This thing is just happening by itself. Okay, that's the form. And you need to be able to see that. What about the mind? The mind has its own ecosystem. Someone told me I should introduce this in class. I said, sure, yeah? Inside Out. Inside Out, right? Inside Out. You all should watch it. So anattā. All those little voices going inside there, telling you, must do this, must do that, all the chemicals. Exactly as it is. The mind responds depending on the chemical conditions. Certain days, you say, I have one of those days. The blue days. You will say that, whatever happened, you blew. It's just like that, isn't it? Someone inject a drug in you and you blank out. Don't remember a thing, you say all kinds of funny things you don't remember. See? You drink. Of course, this congregation doesn't drink, but for those people who drink, right, you look at people who drink, and you know it. When they drink, they say all kinds of things. You see? What's happening in the mind? Chemicals, conditions. There's an ecosystem going on in there. And how much in control are you? Can you say, I drink, and still I can talk Dhamma? Can you do that? No lah. Well, you can try. I don't know what you taught, but you can try. And having all these kind of sensations, if you look at it, think about it. Are you in control? No. Can you tell yourself, I don't do it this way? Sometimes, but most times, no. Have you tried not trying to control your temper? Your anger is coming out, then you try to control it. Worse than constipation, It's just like fuming. Why does it happen? The chemicals have gone crazy. You didn't watch it accurately, you didn't watch it properly, it's gone crazy. Okay? So, tell yourself, in other words, there are two separate ecosystems. Why do I call them ecosystems? Because a whole series of conditions coming together to create a certain effect, and you feel it. Your choices is only one of the conditions. Your choice is just one of the conditions. There are all its own chemicals in there that does its own merry thing. So for instance, when I say your choice is just one of the conditions, suppose I say you are sick. You can choose to introduce drug or not. You can choose it. So you can introduce drug. And then your form takes over. The drug goes in, whether it agrees with your form or not, depends on your form. Can you say, I now give you drug, you behave yourself. You better deliver the A results I expect. Your form will say, yeah, sure. You agree? So you introduce the drug, and the drug does its own merry thing, interacting with the cells at the whatever level, and then sometimes your form says, what kind of things are you introducing? Side effects. Okay? And sometimes they like it, they love it. Before you know it, you're up and bouncing like a rabbit. Because the drugs agree with you. That can happen. Yeah? Okay. Ecosystem. I talked so much I forgot to show you this line. It's just a conditioned process. You can't push it, you can't determine it, you can't drive it. It does its own merry things. You can only make a choice. I choose to be angry, I choose not to be angry. I choose to take the medicine, I choose not to take the medicine. I choose to listen, I choose not to listen. You can introduce a condition. Then whatever it is, depends on what's in the mind, and it takes it from there. I'll give you an example. This one, not a trick question. I expect your hands to come out in doffs, okay? So I ask a question. How many of you interested in Dhamma? Very good. How many of you regularly attend talk? Smaller number. You're interested in Dhamma but don't attend talk. Well done. Okay. How many of you would say that having attended talk, I liat bo kiu? Liat bo kiu means catch no ball. Don't understand, in other words. You put your mind. You choose to go. You want to pay attention. You want to learn. But the ball just went past you. What happened? So you can introduce a condition. You choose to pay attention. But it depends on the clarity of the talk. It depends on the state of your mind. Did you sleep well last night? Is the room too hot for you? All kinds of strange conditions. And then your form respond to it. Your mind respond. And sometimes against your best intention, you fall asleep. I know you all try to stay awake for my talk. The only thing you succeed in doing is not snoring. Actually sometimes you are very good. You hold yourself upright, even though your mind is your brain is like that. Okay, now, number 3. This is the second thing. First thing, see yourself in parts. The second thing, recognize the separate ecosystems. Just remember, tell yourself, there's an ecosystem up there, there's another ecosystem on the form. The third thing, in each of your experience, you keep telling yourself, not mine, not I, not self. This is a Pali word. In other words, this is a meaning. It's not just, not mine, not I, not self. Not mine, not I, not self. And you end up with nothing. It's not just that. When you say something is not mine, it means you don't own it. Consciously, you tell yourself, whatever feelings, whatever perception, whatever experiences, it is not mine. I don't own it. It is the result of an ecosystem responding. Remember this. This is you telling yourself. This is not you seeing it for yourself. Because you're not going to see it until you tell yourself this. So you actually tell yourself consciously, there are feelings. There are feelings. They're not mine. Not mine. I don't own it. If you own it, then it will replay again and again and again in your mind. Some of you say, I've seen past life. You own that also. Seriously. You own all the DVDs. They came into your mind, they are all yours. Then you will die crazy. No, you will die crazy. When you say not I, you are not giving them an identity. Don't own it. Don't say, this is me. Because when you say something is me, it's I, you are giving it an identity. You identify with it. Every time you see it, it's yours. It is you, and it's yours. So you have to conscientiously tell yourself, the feelings I'm experiencing, not mine. It is not a self in it. It's not I in it. And not self. Concepts, ideas, giving them importance, giving them essence. If you were to give any of them essence, meaning, identity, you own it, all of them has got value, has got significance, has got meaning. What does it mean? What do these words? What do these words mean? To say that something has meaning gives it a prominence. Elevate it. The moment you say something has meaning, you elevate it. You say that this is something I want to remember and hold and own. The moment you give it value, you also elevate it. Put it a price there. Make it so important. Once it is so important in your mind will just hold on to it like it is your best friend, man. For life. Not enough for life. Must be for life. Because Buddhists believe in life. Okay, that's the problem, you see. That's the problem. And everything that you find of meaning and value, you're going to do that to yourself. You're going to do that to yourself. You see that? So you tell yourself, it is not mine. It is not I. There is no self. You are teaching your mind to see your mental and physical experiences from a different perspective. Can you now see what the Buddha is doing, or what the Buddha would try to do was to get you to teach your mind new tricks. It's reconditioning your mind. Because all this while you have been conditioning your mind to say, my feelings, my whatever experiences, this food is my cooking. Die with your own cooking, you're going to cook for life. Now, Buddha's words, I'm going to give you the Buddha's words. Now, bhikkhus, this is the way leading to the cessation of identity. One regards the I thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. One regards the form thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. One regards I consciousness thus. Remember what I said earlier? This is your I, which is internal base. The form is the external base. Consciousness, contact, feeling, craving. They're all there. Sorry. Again, the I, the form, consciousness, contact, feeling, craving. Down to when craving arises, you tell yourself, this is not mine. This is not I'm not this. I am not craving. This is not craving, which is me. Don't do that. And there is no self in this. You understand that? Then we got picture for you. You see? Picture will then enable you to remember things better. Also, I think. Take picture must take faster. Okay, seriously. So you can see that down to now, because he was talking to monks, he was already addressing it at the 6 times 6 level. If you're very new, First time meditating, you do it at 2 parts. Remember, mind and form, 5 parts, the 5 aggregates, 6 parts, down to 6 times 6. At each level, you tell yourself. If you're very new, just say form and mind, body and mind. And over time, you begin to be able to differentiate the thinking process, feeling, perception, consciousness, etc. You begin to differentiate that. In all these, you tell yourself, not mine, not I, not self. This is how it is done. Okay? Not done yet. This is only C, got D. Got D, seriously. In each of the above, see impermanence, see constant change. The purpose of trying to see impermanence and see constant change is so that you tell your mind again and again and again, there is nothing worthwhile or substantial to hold on to. You're holding on to wind. You're holding on to something that doesn't last. Feelings don't last. Form doesn't last. We all die. They don't last. Everything that you hold dear one day will fade away. They don't last. So seeing the impermanence, this is really very tiring. Seeing the impermanence enable you to, if your mind is convinced, it enables you to be able to let go. If your mind is not convinced, then you will hold, you see. So the practice requires you to keep telling yourself, in every experience that you have, mental or physical, it comes and it goes. It is not yours. So when you keep saying that, when you keep doing that to yourself, at some point the mind will switch, if you are convinced. Which is the reason why saddha, remember saddha? Faith, confidence in the Dhamma. That saddha is so important because saddha, faith, will tell you, I believe in what the Buddha is teaching, there is truth in it, I will just chase. I will do it this way because he said so. If your saddha is strong, then when you reach this point of trying to see anattā, you don't care. Whatever Buddha says, you just do. So now the Buddha is telling you, when you see an experience, tell yourself, not mine, not I, not self. When you see an experience, see the change, see the impermanence, the impermanent nature of whatever experience. When you keep doing that, because you have faith, right? You could do it the way he said it, then you just chiong that way. He point a direction, you chiong that direction. And when you do that, eventually the mind will start to shift. Okay? Now I'm going to show you what he said. If anyone says, the I is self, that is not tenable. The rise and fall of the I are discern. You know it, you can see it, in other words. Discern is to be able to see. Rise and fall. Since its rise and fall are discern, it would follow. Myself rises and fall. That is why it's not tenable for anyone to say the I is self. Thus the I is not self. Do you understand this part? Remember what earlier on we said the self was? It is permanent, it doesn't change, the essence doesn't change, the self doesn't change. So he said, if you look at the I experience, and not just look at the I, okay? Not ask you to go to the mirror and the I, not that, You are to look at the experience, a visual experience. If you say the self sits in the visual experience, then that visual experience comes and goes. So your self come and go. If your self comes and go, then it's not permanent. Then how can it be real? To them, they straight away would understand. To us, we go, say what? Well, we are a bit more thinking. We think a lot. For them, they will straight away understand. Many of them understood at that level. What does it mean by rise and fall? A visual experience will be replaced by other experiences. If you watch your mind very closely, just on experiences alone, you hear sound, you see things, you smell things, and so on and so forth. It keeps replacing. Even the visual experience changes. First I see you, then 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 you. Rise and fall. comes and dissipates. It keeps changing. So what you need to register deeply is to change. It keeps changing. That change, the impermanence, is real. Whatever you experience, flips. You are channel surfing. If you watch your mind closely, you will see the channel surfing all the time. But they came up so fast, and it keeps flipping so fast, you think that they are all connected. They are just one giant experience. But no, it's actually 7,892 experiences in 1 minute. You see what I'm saying? The number's not real. Finally, applies to all equally without distinction. There are two parts to it, two parts to this statement. Part one, my mind working, your mind working, the mind working, same pace. Meaning to say, for my eye to catch sight of a visual object, register it and react to it, that speed, the rate of which I see and respond is the same. The processing speed is the same for everyone. We don't have a higher CPU. Our CPUs all function at the same pace. So universally the same. Nothing unique about you, nothing unique about me. You understand this? Point one. Point two, look at what the Buddha say. So this is earth element, right? What is internal earth element? And then you have the external earth element. And all of them you're supposed to say, not mine, sorry, no laser. Not mine, I'm not this is not self, right? When one sees it as thus, as it actually is, with proper wisdom, this is panya, one becomes disenchanted with the earth element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the earth element. You just take these words first. Let me flip to the next chart. There comes a time when the true earth element, the external earth element, vanishes. When even this external earth element, great as it is seen to be impermanent, subject to destruction, disappearance, and change, what of this body, which is clung to by craving and lasts but for a while? Do you understand this? That if the external world that you can see around you, that lasts so much longer than any of us, the trees, the mountains, the land that you walk on, the rivers, all these earth elements out there, they last for so much longer, and they also are impermanent. What more us? We die in a nanosecond relative to them. So universally, we are governed by the same principles. In other words, depressing, isn't it? So, if others abuse you, just know that the feeling, which is painful, that arises as a result of a ear contact, just tell yourself has a reason in me. That is dependent, not independent. Dependent on what? Dependent on contact. Then he sees that contact is impermanent, feeling is impermanent, perception is impermanent, formations are impermanent, consciousness is impermanent. And his mind, having made an element, its objective support enters into and acquires confidence, steadiness, and resolution. In other words, you take the meditation object. You're looking at your ear, you're looking at your eye, you're looking at whatever. You are looking at it, you see it objectively, you realize that each one is conditional. Each one arose as a result of the previous experience. It's all conditional. you can see this, you will suddenly acquire for yourself faith in the teaching. You can see it, you will acquire faith. Faith will then give you the conviction, the confidence, the determination to walk on. All these are seen. Buddha's point, they are seen for yourself. You see it, you see the Dhamma, you will walk. Okay? I don't know what's coming up next. Okay. Finally, why would we want to practice? This is actually to answer our own question. In this practice, until you get to a part where you really see it, until you get to that point, this practice can be tough. It is tough because the normal mind, the mundane mind, our usual habit, that which had enabled us to live so long through so many existences, is to bury the pain, ignore it, didn't see it, or pander to it. You either pacify it or you try to distract it. You understand? Our mind works like this. Right now, you're telling the mind, stop this habit. Stop the pandering. Stop the distracting. See it as it is. When you start to see it as it is, the dukkha will shine in your face. It's like a spotlight. Suddenly, you see the dukkha for what it is. For some of you, we all believe in past lives, right? For some of you, you already started in a different time. And because you started in a different time, in this life, you don't go back to the practice, you go crazy figuring out what the hell is going on. Why is everybody enjoying, indulging, and I can't? Because I just feel it's not real. Have you ever experienced that? No? Yes? Don't know. Maybe I did, but maybe in my dream. Seriously. Any of you experienced, before you actually got into the practice, you always had the sense that there's dukkha? You don't understand why it is, but it feels painful. So you do what the habits tell you, just read a book. Don't read Dhamma, just read a book, any book. Or better still, talk to friend, chat. Huh? Now, what I'm going to introduce is what the Buddha said. If you can get it right, this is your returns, okay? For the monk, not the practitioner, the true practitioner, he will get to a state where he doesn't, I will be without identification in the entire world. Doesn't mean he lost his IC. It doesn't mean that. It means he no longer identifies things as his. He doesn't identify things as his. I-making will cease for me. All these instincts, mine, I'm this, I'm that, it stops. Mind-making will stop. I will come to possess knowledge that others don't have. Okay? I will have clearly seen causation. I will have clearly seen causally a reason phenomena. Some of you will say, oh, this very short, meh? When your mind gets to a state, when the mind gets to a state, when it is of this nature, let me just give you the last one, okay? When the mind gets to a state where it is of this nature, what will happen is your sense of burden, that you have been carrying the load, that sense of burden is put down. If you look at your own mind today, when you are into meditation and you sincerely meditating well, at some point you begin to realize that actually there is a burden in carrying this perception of self. I have to be like this, I have to be like that, I cannot do this, I cannot do that, I must do this, I must do that. All these subconsciously. It is not necessarily conscious. Your practitioner, you realize it's conscious, but if you're not, you start to realize subconsciously there is a sense of having to live up to something. Live up to your perception of yourself. That you have to be this, you have to be that, to be somebody. But the day that you realize that all these being somebody, being something, being an idea, the day you realize that all these are just mental construct. I want to be this, so you construct to be that. All these mental constructs, while useful for you to exist in the mundane world, they are ultimately meaningless because ultimately the journey will end with you lying in a coffin. Again, and again, and again, and again. So all the mental construct which causes you so much grief in your lifetime ends up with a meaningless end. Not to say, it's not to say, I'm losing my voice. Give me a sec. This is not to say that you don't try. But you try to do the thing that will truly enable you to be happy. Rather than to help you be somebody, thinking that being that somebody makes you happy. And then when you got there, you realize, like that only. I am like that only. After all the efforts, it amounts to you being more miserable. Like bo hua, not worth it. Here, the Buddha was trying to get us to do the things that will truly enable the mind to be happy. And then the mind can be free. But to get there, you have to be a good person. Not the good person you think you should be, but the good person by the path that will get you there. So you hop onto the correct train. Your own mind-made train will lead you to don't know where. The Buddha's Dhamma path, the Buddha's train will get you to a state of mind where it will be free and happy.